You're listening to the NC F&B podcast. The North Carolina Food and Beverage Podcast takes you behind the scenes of North Carolina's food and beverage industry. Be sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at NCFB Pod, presented by Food Scene. That's foodseen.com, providing professional photography, social media management, video production, and website design. And now, enjoy the show.
Listening to the NC F&B podcast at Euphoria, Greenville. I am your co-host, Max Trujillo.
And I am your co-host, Matthew Weiss. And we are with Candice Herriott, the author of Provisions to Plate, the book about the Low Country in Charleston, South Carolina.
Yeah, it's about our food scene. I worked with 20 farmers, fishing companies, and chefs. And just spent a year really kind of wanting to tell their story. So, they kind of invited me out to the fields and out on the boats and kind of in the back of the kitchens at the restaurants. And, we really just got to know each other, and I got to see what they do kind of day in, day out. And, really what I was looking to do was create an illustration of what the Low Country looks like, tastes like, and feels like throughout the whole year. So we did seasonal increments. And so all of the recipes are really seasonally focused. So it's a lot of the proteins coming in and the produce. We're super lucky. We're right on the coast. So we have tons of fresh shellfish and, just amazing proteins to work with.
That's awesome. I love that. I've talked about, I think the best cookbooks are the ones that really envelop the year, because you should be eating in the season of which you were living. And
absolutely.
That's kind of the best way to eat. It's you're in the middle of the summer, have some watermelon. If you're in the winter, have some root vegetables.
Yeah, the produce is much more flavorful, has a lot more nutrients in it. Plus, you're really supporting your neighbor right down the road that's growing it, and that's really impactful for your community. I'm the kind of person, I go to the farmer's market, I'm like, oh, this looks good. I have no idea what these things are. How do I cook it? And I like to learn new things. Half the time I have no idea what I'm doing. But I think that's the cool thing about living in a very food-centric place, is you get to know the people that are growing your food.
Yeah, no doubt. Aside from your huge love of video golf, as we learned
I am a pro.
Last night,
yeah,
golden tee at Barley's.
Took it home.
Yeah, on the 9th green is where we bid us all adieu, because I think we shut down the bar. But it was a good time. Aside from that love, let's talk about you. Let's bring it from the beginning to end. I don't know if I didn't mean to cut you off, Matt. You were about to say a super compelling question, but I was going to ask.
Of course I was.
Yeah. A very unique question.
Very.
Yeah. Matt hates when you qualify unique with the word very.
Oh my gosh, you guys might not like me. I'm so grammatically incorrect all the time.
Totally.
You wrote a book.
You can follow her
grammatically incorrect.
So ironically, in my intro, I spell it out very clearly so I don't get critically slashed. I make the most grammatical errors of anybody. I'm the worst writer ever, but I think that that's kind of one of the things that my followers like about what I do. I started out as a blogger, and then kind of it emerged into a lot of independent writing opportunities, but I just say, I use exclamation points too much. I use the word love too much. I use parentheses incorrectly.
Yes, these are all things bad. I love, too.
But when people read it, they have your real voice. So when it actually went to editing, my editor was like, we have to change all of this. Your commas are not correct. This is making me really upset.
Sure.
And I at first was all right. And then I started seeing, the tone of it change. And I'm like, you know what?
No.
Actually, when you are paying to publish a book yourself, you get to make those calls.
Yeah.
And, I'm sure work I'm going to do later on in the future is going to be, much more put through a filter of correct editing. But, I think it's important to be real. And I think that's why people kind of follow along what I do.
Yeah, well, if you don't know Candice by her name, you might know her by her handle on Instagram, because you have quite a lot of followers and you do some really compelling things. It's at CHS Food Writer. Correct. Which is really cool. You've got so much great content on there, both visually and just grammatically incorrect writing.
Lots to work with.
But it's fantastic. And that kind of inspired, that was the catalyst, I would say, right? That was from doing blogging is what led you to be an actual writer of books.
Yeah, it was an accident, to be honest. I was on the heels of a breakup and probably had one too many glasses of red wine, and I just realized I needed to redirect my energy into a creative outlet that wasn't work and wasn't my family, and a bunch of my friends that were chefs had been suggesting it for a long time.
What was work at that point?
I was a hairstylist for 20 years.
Oh.
So, a lot of my friends that were chefs kept saying you really are the perfect person that should do a blog. because my clients were always like, we have 3 kinds of conversations, right? Like, where are we traveling? What are we doing with our family? And where are you eating? Mm-hmm. And I'm a huge eater. Like, I would work 12-hour days, and then at night, like, I just want to go sit down in a corner someplace with a magazine and like order something really good because I've just been standing for 12 hours.
Yeah.
So I was like always offering suggestions of where I was going and what I was ordering, and then people started asking me, could I like put together itineraries for them when they have family coming in town? And I'm like, you live in the heart of downtown, like, you know the cool stuff, you know, like, you don't need me to tell you. And they're like, no, you get out so much more than I do. And so that was one component of it. Also, I grew up gardening and going to farmers markets with my grandparents, and you know, it's kind of, food is a really big part of our life. I'm a big believer that food is at the center of everything, you know, like all of your family occasions kind of revolve around holidays and like festivities and where are we going, what are we doing, what are we making. And,
absolutely.
And I love that, like, you kind of just, it brings you together, and then it just becomes like the next layer of it is like really getting excited to cook together. And it's like, oh yeah, let's make that awesome, like, you know, what lamb chop with the this and the that, and you know, it's just, you learn a lot, and it's bonding time. I think that's gotten lost in our culture a lot. And so I think when I started the blog, I had no idea what I was doing. I literally Googled, how do I start a free food blog? And, later that night came up with a handle, and, you know, that's what creative inspiration from Vino does. Yeah.
And it's cool to hear those stories that, like, you kind of get centered and motivated by this food culture that we live in.
Yeah, one of the things I love the most is the stories, like really getting to know people and how did they, you know, get inspired to become a chef or a farmer, or, you know, did they grow up on a generational farm and that's what they've been surrounded by, but they made the choice to continue it. And I love all of that. And that's actually like kind of what has emerged with my blog. Is it's not so much like me doing restaurant reviews. Like, I'm not a critic. I'm the first person to say that. You know, like, that's somebody's real job. Like, they've been, you know, they've been instructed, and they've gone through like this rigorous period of understanding how to be a critic, and I'm not that. So, you know, I always say everything I do is comes from a positive place, and it's really just trying to help promote people that are doing really cool stuff.
Yeah.
And so that's the voice now of, I think, all my Instagram stuff, and that's what led me to the book.
You're kind of like the literary version, South Carolina version of our podcast.
Yeah, you're like the NC F&B.
Yeah.
I was going to say the same thing. Yeah.
I'm confused. What geographically defines the Low Country for those people that don't really know?
Yeah, so a lot of people think it's like a city or a county. It's not. It's really the whole coastal line of South Carolina. I think it's actually the entire coastal area, and it's because it's geographically very low set. It's, you know, that's why whenever we get like these big storms and a lot of rain from, you know, kind of the mid part of the state, it really floods out down near Charleston and Beaufort and, you know, Myrtle Beach. It's because, you know, all that water's trying to get to the ocean. So it's going through the marshes and the tidal creeks, and you know, so they define it by the geographical space, but also it has its own culinary feel to it because it is on the coast, so you have a lot of influence with the shellfish. And
nice.
Yeah.
In speaking to so many different chefs that you've met and following on their storylines, people have asked us before, like, well, what's your favorite episode you've ever done, and, you know, compelling things. But I'll pose that to you. What's something that really touched home or really set somewhere in your heart when you were covering stories of different various chefs in the area?
I totally, hands down, know what it is. It was 2 years ago. It was a project called 30 Days at Oysters, and I realized I'll never do 30 days of anything ever again. But I will say my love for oysters grew tremendously, and I don't know, I got like this hairball idea that like I wanted to do something that nobody had done before. And this is the thing, like, I still don't read blogs, so I don't know what people are doing. Like, when I come up with these ideas, it's just from like, oh, I think that'd be cool, or like, I know this person that's doing something. And so I was like, oh, I want to feature for 30 days, like, it was the start of oyster season, I want to feature like oyster artwork, where to get like this oyster dish. Like, when I moved to Charleston 15 years ago, I hated it.
From
Michigan. I got recruited for work, and just had a really good opportunity to come down.
You got recruited to cut hair in Charleston?
Yep.
Wow, I didn't know that they recruit people to cut hair.
Well, when you're a badass,
they do seriously. You are a tonsorial expert.
Hair to Low Country pipeline.
Yeah.
That should be a bumper sticker. I love it. I just got lost.
No, you were talking about your favorite stories of the oysters.
Yeah, and so I really didn't like when I moved to Charleston, and I knew that it would be a transitional time. And I think anytime you move, you have to give yourself 2 solid years to like find your people and your places and your coffee shop and get your groove, like really create your new life. And so I was at the end of my 2-year mark, and I'm like, I'm so out of here. Like, I didn't find my people. And then one of my clients, I think, sensed that and invited me to an oyster roast at her house, which I'd never been to before. And I walked up at first. I was really intimidating. I didn't grow up eating oysters. You know, we eat red meat like 7 days a week in the Midwest.
Yeah.
My aunt and uncle were cattle farmers, so that's like no joke. And somebody saw me walk away, and they're like, hey, like, you know, introduced themselves, and like, have you ever been to an oyster roast before? It was clear I had not. And they taught me how to do
clear?
it.
Were you dressed in like...
Yeah, I was not dressed
Were you
appropriately.
like eating the shell of the oyster? Like, darling, you gotta open that.
I think I picked it up, looked at it, and set it back down. I had no idea like how to open it. It was like, you know, pretty much like drop me in the middle.
The chimpanzees in 2001, they're just smacking it. I don't know how this works.
But it was a very inspiring moment, I think, in my life. And then, you know, like the more I did all these kind of different things, you know, invited to different parties, and I love the camaraderie of standing around the oyster table and shucking and having a beer on a cold night, you know. And so when I did this oyster project, I'm like, I want to help break it down for other people that don't know how to do an oyster roast. So I went to a chef and I'm like, hey, how do you host an oyster roast, or like how do you make, you know, an oyster dish? And so I just went and like worked with a bunch of different chefs, a bunch of different artists, and just on my Instagram and my blog, like every single day I was like posting like new content, like, hey, get these shucking oyster knives like at this place, or, you know, you can order this online here. And it was cool. It was really informational, and people still talk about it to this day, and I loved it. And I just now I can really understand all the varietal flavors and pick it apart. Like when you're having so many different kinds of oysters side by side, you really get to like understand the nuance of the flavor profile. And you know, it's like I can pick out like the seaweed or like the brininess, and I love it.
Cool.
Sorry, I could go on forever. I'm
no,
very
we just
passionate.
had an oyster episode, the one that Max was talking about before, with Dan Lewis of Coastal Provisions, which is out in southern shores on the Outer Banks of North Carolina. But
yeah,
we understand those oyster nuances.
Man, I am like so passionate about it. Like that's my dream. I want to have an oyster farm just for myself. I'm not going to sell them. I just want to like go out there and like water garden every day.
Yeah.
So, but when you were back in Michigan and you were cutting hair right before you got drafted to Charleston, Clemson's calling. We need you to up our haircut game. I make light of this, but food wasn't really in your purview at the moment, right? Like this was just you were cutting hair, and you weren't I guess the cool part about this is that you kind of came out of nowhere with this, and that also kind of speaks to you can kind of do whatever the hell you want to do in this life, and you were doing something that was bumming you out or not setting you in the right position, and you just let life dictate the next thing, and you said, all right, well, I'm going to do this now.
Yeah, it was really supposed to be kind of like a spot where, like, when people ask, like, hey, like, what are your top favorite places right now? Like, what's something you really had? It was just, I wasn't, like, having the same conversation over every day. I could say, oh, yeah, like, go check out my blog. And, you know, the funny thing is, like, I didn't know what I was doing, so I didn't know what was right or wrong. And I figured, probably the only person that's ever going to look at it's my mom. And, you know, 3.5 years later, she's still never been on it.
Yeah, there you go.
Do you have, I think about this all the time, like, I heard from a lot of veteran radio people and writers in general that you write for a person. Like, hypothetically, you think of when you write pen to paper, are you thinking like, I'm writing to my mom right now, or is there a particular person in your mind that you write for?
No, I mean, that's an interesting concept. I'm going to have to like really digest that later. I'm going to be so much of a better writer after this podcast. I'm learning so much. Give me more info.
Yeah.
No, I don't really have an idea of a person. I really...
Our person, his name is John May.
This is so specific.
Front of the house at
Very
Crawford
handsome.
and Son.
He does wine. He drinks wine. No.
Right.
I want to meet this guy.
Oh, every woman wants to meet this guy.
I like it. No, I think
Just watch season 2 of A Chef's Life.
What I really try to do is just take one thing that I'm doing and showcasing, and whoever it's for or whatever I'm trying to feature, just do it in a really positive place of how do I feel about this or what am I excited about. So maybe I write to myself, wow, that's super narcissistic.
It's okay.
I think that's
I'm gonna do some thinking on that.
Well, maybe writing is kind of therapeutic for you. So
it is actually kind of like journaling for me, I think.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I want to help you sell some books here for a second. So you did this 30 Days of Oysters. That was your blog and your social media campaign, but how does that translate into the book?
So interestingly enough, because I don't ever know what I'm doing with these things, I just called this oyster guy and I said, can I go on a boat with you? I want to learn from the boat with you how to oyster harvest. And he was like, are you serious? Why? I was like, because I'm interested. I want to know. And he's like, okay. Can you be here at like 7 a.m.? I'm like, okay, yep, I'm there. Tell me like what I need to bring. He's like, clothes that can get ruined. And I loved it. That's like when I really fell in love.
With him or with the oyster farming?
I mean, maybe all of it. I'm not sure.
They run that boat for a while.
Was it John May?
And so it was like a big, I didn't know it, but like people really connected to that because they saw me go out and do it. And I think a lot of people have interest, and that's part of buying books in general, is like you want to see something from a different perspective and learn something from a new, a new place. And so you get into that person's head that's writing it. And so actually I do feature 2 oyster farms in my book. There's several oyster dishes. One of the chefs, one of the 10 chefs for the book, is from an oyster bar. There's a big oyster part of the book. Yeah.
I think we've hit the maximum of the time that we can say oyster on the podcast.
Sorry.
Now.
Everybody that hates oysters now is like, they're cut out.
They tuned out already.
Sorry, guys.
Where can people buy Provisions to Plate?
They can order it online on my website, chsfoodwriter.com. We ship pretty much all over. I've sent some stuff to like Europe. Surprisingly, I have no idea how those people ever heard of me. So they can get it there, downtown Charleston. It's at a couple spots. Mercantile and Mash, Sugar Bake Shop, if you're in Charleston.
Great spot, yeah.
Yeah, I love that. They have such an awesome collection of like cool kick-ass books.
Matt and I had a great breakfast there after BevCon last year.
Nice.
Yeah, awesome.
Before we hit them. And so I think people ask this a lot to us. Do you have people now seeking you out that want, hey, come write about my story, or we should talk? And
yeah, interestingly enough, like there's been a much greater interest in that than I thought.
Yeah.
So there's an actual region that we are talking right now, and they want me to do the exact same book for their region.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, I mean, I hope that works out because I loved making the book. I loved spending a year, just like watching these farms like go through their seasonal wardrobe, basically, of like changing, and it was beautiful.
I have to ask you, and you don't have to answer because it might be personal, but people ask us all the time. So, when you were writing this book, how were you earning a living?
Oh, I was still doing some hair.
Oh, you were still doing, had like...
a little bit.
Okay.
A little bit. I mean, it's pretty much like I've transitioned out now. I do a lot of like social media management and strategic branding for different individuals and companies.
Nice.
That's like not something that's really on any of my stuff, so a lot of people don't realize it. I also get called to like do, just brainstorming for companies. Ironically, I'm like, you're a huge company. Like, you don't have people that just sit around and think up ideas, and they're like, no, we're going to hire you to do that.
Yeah, they don't really have divisions for that anymore.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, it's fun. A lot of independent contracting. I do a lot of photography work with restaurants.
I think more importantly, I think we need to franchise out and start the SC F&B.
Yeah.
And maybe you be our correspondent in Low Country.
Please hire me, yeah.
You get the chefs, you bring them in, I'll set you up with a studio, satellite out there, and Matt and I will zoom in.
Yeah.
Like, online.
I love this.
And we could like all get in on it and talk and then continue the story. Let's do it.
Let's do that. Yeah, for sure.
Very cool. Well,
thank you so much for having me.
Yes, this is fantastic. I do believe I won at Golden Tee last night.
Max
I was about
the winner.
7 under par, which was pretty awesome.
I didn't want to say anything, but I was the actual winner.
Over
You might be a
par.
little fuzzy on the details, but it was my first time playing golf, so I'm going to declare myself the winner, okay?
That's all right. I won at real golf, which is all that matters.
It was the first time I played a video game in years. You guys got to give me a little credit.
No, you were awesome. You were under par at the time you left. So
and seriously, no joke,
kudos.
Way better than Matt Weiss.
And you were way better than me.
That's right.
But we're going back tonight, and I'm going to seek my revenge at Golden Tee.
Round 2.
Yeah.
Here we go. Pam is coming in, and she's like taking over the golf.
Boom. For those of you out there, check out her blog. Check out everything that Candice Herriott is doing, and get the book. Provisions to Plate, all about the Low Country.
I will say this because it's a little confusing for people. It does say on the cover Candice Townsend because I'm engaged and getting soon married.
Mazel tov.
Thank you.
Was that the oyster? Was he the oyster farmer?
No, he was actually an Instagram follower.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a whole story right there.
It's a whole story.
Seriously.
Yeah. So it
we'll
does
have
say
to talk
Candice
about that on next
Townsend,
episode,
but
over a game of golf.
I wasn't going to be like reprinting hundreds of books. So
wait, Townsend's your maiden name?
Townsend's going to be my new name.
Your new name. Oh, so you set it up with your new name before you even released the book. Nice. Or before you got married.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Well,
so
nice.
go get the book.
Provisions to Plate.
Provisions to Plate by Candice Townsend. I like that because that's a lot easier to say also.
I want to make things easy for people, so I'm glad.
Yeah, and follow her at CHS Food Writer on Instagram.
Okay.
And then you will eat, drink, and read very merrily.
Yes, with all my grammar inconsistencies.